Hello and welcome to TF.Talk, a new podcast where we sit down with your favorite Team Fortress 2 content creators. Whether it's streaming, YouTube, or any of the other corners of the TF2 community, the goal is to bring on people and have genuine conversations surrounding our favorite game, and hopefully learn something about their perspective and their time online. On today's episode, we have one of the original content creators in the community. He's one of the guys behind the longest running content creator group and producers in the game. Welcome to the first episode of TF.Talk, Agro. I want to thank you for at least giving me all these pointers that we've been going through before the whole process of getting this started. It means a lot, definitely. People that I guess don't really understand what it is to really sit and produce something. You know, when you get into it, when you really want to make it seem professional and not just slap together, you got to really look for pointers or people that at least have the experience in production. So, thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
No, it's fine. I mean, the temptation for that is to say that you're not really going to know what you're doing until you've done it a few times, probably even not even then. But as with all these things, you've got to learn, like Catch-22. You can't have the job until you have the experience, but you can't get the experience until you have the job. So do it, figure it out as you go along, and then recognize the mistakes and hopefully you fix them.
This entry-level job requires 5 years of experience. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Well,
I do. Yeah.
I think that
no one's been paying me for it, but yeah.
I think that for a lot of people, I think the initial kind of gate is learning to socialize and learning kind of how to really speak to people, and not just in a public sense, but when it comes down to like a controlled sense. And for me, I think it really started when I was really working in food service, because I was very, very antisocial and introverted. But working in places like that with people, we have to deal with customer service and evolving situations, and everything is so different every day. You kind of learn to get over that fear, and I've learned to actually enjoy it. So I'm not sure how you picked up on being able to talk to people, but for me, it kind of comes naturally. I yap, so.
Yeah, I think for me, I still am very much afraid. I'm very insular. I'm very much afraid of talking to other people. Particularly the first time I have a conversation with someone, I'll be the very, very quiet person. I'll be the person who looks like they're about to say something really profound and serious. And then I'll say boobs and just throw the whole conversation off. But no, it's... I think what I do is I tend to like store words up or store the ability to converse up. And then when I get into like a one-to-one with someone, I can just chat endlessly, as you well know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of pick it up, and everyone's different. For me, I can just get up and go. I can just get up and go and start moving. But for some people, you kind of have to warm up and really get into the mojo. And it's cool that like everyone is different, and a lot of people don't think in terms of everybody else. So
I think listening is kind of super useful as well. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things that they tell you. Good listeners are so hard to find, and I think the reality of it is that you can pretend to be a good listener fairly well, but the reality is like just leaving those pregnant pauses, leaving gaps and spaces for people to fill in, and picking up on whatever it is they're putting down, and then laying something down in front of them that you know that they're going to be able to pick up on.
Yeah, it's about not just hearing but listening. You know, to quote that song, "The Sounds of Silence." You don't just hear it, but you have to really listen to what this person is saying. And I feel like a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it too. There's days where you just don't have that energy, and you hear the words coming in, but you don't really process what they're saying, and you kind of space out. And that's I don't blame people for that. You know, it takes brain power, and your brain consumes like however many percent of calories a day that you consume. It's a lot of energy, more than your muscles. So you can't give people too much fault. But I've learned to really enjoy talking to people, and I think it's great. You know, I feel for people that are introverted. I really do. But I feel like with enough training and pushing, you know, once that bird leaves the nest and starts flying, I think that process of just hitting the wall until you get it worked for me. I'm not sure about everyone else, but exposure kind of hardened me, and now I love it. I think it's great.
I still have that. I don't know whether Charlie Brown is still played anymore. It used to be played like every Christmas when I was growing up. Peanuts, yeah. But you know when like Charlie Brown is listening to the teachers and all you can hear is them that's kind of like when I'm listening to anybody else. I've really got to try and pay attention, otherwise everything is just
I get that. Well, it's a level of interest that you have to show as well. I feel like, especially for me at this age now, it's like, you know what? If I'm just not interested, I am just not interested in it. I don't think it's worth my time. And that's not like in a rude way against any people. But if there's topics or something that I'm being forced to learn, like currently I'm studying statistics, I get it, but it is a drag having to just go through statistics and learning all these different concepts and ways of processing data. It's just like, what are we doing here? And I got to take breaks every 10 minutes. I got to take half an hour every 10 minutes because I'm going to go insane.
No, for sure. I've been in plenty of, not necessarily in meetings per se, but like I definitely, when it comes to learning stuff, I have a tendency towards falling asleep. My default reaction towards being bored is just to fall asleep. So it's fairly often, obvious if I'm bored.
You know where you did not sound bored? Seasonalander. You did not sound bored, Seasonalander.
Dude, Seasonalander. So much fun, though.
You came in and rocked it. That was funny as hell.
So I remember doing Hugs the first time when they were reading, that they themselves were doing donation readings, and they the main guys behind Hugs, Loic and the crew over there, Epley, they wanted to get. They'd done a lot of the recordings they'd done a lot of the readings of the donations, and you could see them sort of waning, like they'd just done so many, and it was so cool as well because people were donating money, but like the laughter had gone out of their eyes and out of their voices.
It became more of a job than it did like fun.
Yeah, 100%, and there were about like a dozen of us, maybe less, in the audience, and by the audience there was like a small selection of chairs that we were like watching them and giving them live feedback.
Yeah.
And they kind of they did that thing where they reached out to the crowd and said, guys, if anybody wants to jump in, would anybody like to read one of these messages? And you could see that thing, like nobody moved, but everybody did that thing you do at maths class where you all kind of try and hide under your desk.
Oh no, yeah. And it's like red alert, everyone's freaking out, like, oh no.
I thought, screw it. I'm just going to do it, because if you're going to do it, then you may as well like throw absolutely everything into it. Mm-hmm. So I stood up and I wandered over and I said, may I? And then I did the whole Agro voice, the whole kind of, hello, wonderful to be here, fantastic, blah, blah, and fantastic donation by this human being of excellent standards. And that was the kind of like the moment where you realize that if you kind of like throw like this overacting persona into a mix, people will respond to it so positively. And if you actually not really believe in yourself, but you throw a part of yourself forward, it brings everything up. It brings the energy of everyone else up around you. And you only have to do it for a little while. And suddenly, like having done this for like 30 seconds, all of the hosts had been kind of like falling asleep and just sort of getting into their LMO, just doing the level best they could to stay awake because they've been doing this recording for the last like 12 hours. They suddenly were awake again. They were suddenly interacting, and you could see chat responding as well and everything. And it was just such a cool thing to do. It's
a level of charisma, and kind of like you said, I think it's getting over the fear of like being judged, because I feel personally from what you're saying, I've done that too. I think and I'm no expert, I think it's a psychology of an understanding that you're putting forward a character, and any criticisms based on what you're doing in that moment aren't valid because, hey, I was just playing a character, right? So you kind of can get rid of that stigma and responsibility, and I like doing that. And I think I don't usually do characters because I think it's hard to stay in a character, but I like to exaggerate, emotionally speaking, because of course when you get the hype up, you believe the hype that you're putting out, you build upon it, and then people pick up on the energy, and it's just so much more entertaining instead of just and the scout walked onto the point and he's capping. It's like, oh my god, scouts alone. You have to like put on something for the people to really enjoy, because experiences are not only visual but audible. You have to really wrap it together.
For sure, when you're doing something like casting as well, like people can see their screens. Like they don't need you. If you're casting, they don't need you to be there. You're there to add additional information, additional color, to point things out to whoever's observing. Maybe this is a really cool thing to be watching, but really, it's there. You're there to add the audience, or to embody the audience's hype about a thing that's either happening or has just happened or is just about to happen. And that's kind of like the role. It's such a like. I've always kind of watched people doing I want to say F1 racing, where all you're doing is watching a car go around a circuit.
Yeah.
And like for 90% of the race, it's just the same cars in the same positions, going around the same circuit, same corners, that you know they're going to make it around the corner. It's not going to be a problem. But there are two moments right at the very beginning and right at the very end where there's so much action going on. It's incredible. Everybody's trying to pass everybody else. There's potential for crashes and all that kind of stuff. And those are the moments where you sort of don't need a caster, although you sort of do, because you need to be able to like quickly throw out all of this information of what's really happening. What are you seeing with your eyeballs? For the rest of the time it's boring, and the only way you can get through it is if you're there doing backstories of racers and things they said in the pit lane, and just building up the excitement around and keeping that sort of momentum of the excitement going all the way until the very end.
So what you're saying there is exactly true, and people don't usually think about the extended role of a commentator. Like you just said, it's not just about putting out information, because anybody could do that. Like, oh, this car is going to pass this car and that and that.
Yeah.
But for example, something I really enjoy, or I used to enjoy in a previous generation, because we live in America, I do, not you, was NASCAR. I love NASCAR. And a big part of what got me into NASCAR was the commentary, because like you said, during a good portion of it, it's people maybe changing positions and moving here and there. Yeah. But you need people who not only understand what is happening, but can explain what is happening to you in an energetic way to get you entertained. Because for me, when I was really young, I didn't understand what two cars, bumper to bumper passing each other meant. But, when someone's commenting like, oh, Ricky Bobby's slipstreaming from behind, with the aerodynamic drafting, he's getting a push, which in turn he's pushing the guy in front of him. And it's like when you get that sort of firsthand knowledge from somebody who's been in the sport, and they combine it with the presentation of experience and character, you can't look away. Sometimes you want to look at such good audio, because like you said, sometimes you don't need it. But it's so cool that people reach a level of presentation that's not just informative, but entertaining. And I think that's hard to nail. So that's really cool.
They're definitely and we've got so much talent on Kritzkast at the moment. But there are certain individuals that can do that whilst bringing their own personality into it, and being informative, whilst being colourful, whilst being exciting. Not hyping the audience up too much, bring them down to a level, following through. It's not so much that they're after a point commentating. It's more like they're telling like an amazing story with with the action that they can see in front of them, and you're sort of along for the ride. But even at the end of it, you sort of walk away and you think, oh shit, I understand TF2 more than I did before coming into this. I understand more about that player and how great that thing was that they just did, and how rare it is that they've managed to pull that off, and the difficulty associated with that, and the position that they put themselves in, that they put the rest of the team in order to achieve that one particular goal.
Exactly.
So there's so much of the complexity of TF2 is explained by casters themselves. And a lot of the storytelling of TF2. Like, TF2 is not an easy thing to cast.
Oh, no,
compared to like a lot of other esports in particular. If you think of something like Dota, where there's long periods of nothingness happening.
Yeah.
Where you get to talk about like coming up towards the end, like the strategies that are in play, and discuss the things that you're going to see. And even with something like CSGO, there's lots of null points where nothing is going to happen, and as a commentator, it is your role to try and inform the audience about what they're expected to see, or the importance of the point that was just captured, or anything of that nature. With TF2, you can almost guarantee that at no point will there be an opportunity to relax, because there's so much going on, particularly in Highlander, where it's just the pockets of energy happening all the time across the map, and the observer can point towards any of them, and that there's just going to be sheer action. Like, Highlander is kind of difficult to watch. I feel like it's the first time I watched it, even when it was streaming on Kritzkast, the first time I watched Highlander, I was thinking, what have I got myself in for?
Oh, God,
this is just torture. Why would anybody want to watch this? But the more you watch it, the more you experience it, the more you think, oh my God, this is like height of excitement. I want to see more and more and more of this.
So on that note, right? So when I first really started doing casting, it was for a seasonal lander. That's all I've really done. I've done one or two here and there, but I didn't have any real experience casting. I had a general good idea of competitive strategy and how it all worked, right? And because I did a little bit of competitive, but I kind of let that skill go. So I'm not the highest player around by any means, but what you're saying about specifically TF2 casting is accurate, because when we were doing something like seasonal lander, there is no time to stop and pause and think about what's going to happen. It's the scout runs on point and gets bombed by demo, gets picked off by sniper, gets stabbed by the spy, and you don't have time to really process the implications and meanings of these plays and why they're so great. And then the next thing just happens. And it is a whirlwind. It's just like shaking a box full of just rocks, you know?
You haven't finished figuring out what just happened to you, and here you suddenly get presented with this amazing other thing that's also happened.
It's horrifying. It's horrifying.
It is just this constant stream of information that as a caster, you've got to decide, like, what is the thing that you want to focus on? What's the thing you want to see? I mean, there's more to it. I'm talking about it as a caster, like I'm a caster. Yeah. I'm kind of not. I mean, I barely do anything to do with Kritzkast anyway. There are so many more people much better qualified than I am that you really want to get on the show at some point and talk to them. But there's observers, there's producers, there's a lot of people pouring a lot of energy into disseminating this information, making it like freely available for the viewers at home to enjoy. Both those who know what's going on, who are competitors themselves, and those who don't, people who just kind of stroll past the channel, poking their head through the door, want to be able to give them at least a taster of the ferocity that is TF2 competitive.
For people that are involved in production and stuff, I definitely, in any sense, they deserve a lot more praise than we give them, because of course, like, casters and presenters get the whole brunt of the physical and, like, you know, representation of a brand or event. But like you said, there's people behind the scenes who are developing not just say visual assets, but they're actually physically controlling these streams and making sure all the data gets in place, and they're making calls, you know, on the other line to make sure the people on stage, quote unquote on stage, are getting things right. So I think you're right, 100%. There's people that are behind projects that sometimes don't get the attention they deserve, and the amount of work they put in makes it possible for people that cast or put on the face of a brand or the face of a show really couldn't operate without. You know, they're such good people. So shout out to anybody who does that. We had J-Max on a couple of previous seasonal landers, and we had Dr. _ on this previous seasonal lander. Yeah. So they did a great job, and I love them for that. It's super, super hard job. But seasonal lander itself was a lot of fun.
I could sit here and shout out a whole ton of people. I mean, I am going to shout out Vito for just being the goat of competitive production. But yeah, there's Connor. There's J-Max. There's a whole bunch of people who put their life and soul into like a production side, and invariably what you'll find is that they're either like 100% steeped in the competitive side themselves, or they hold a position of authority within that group. If you look at someone like Connor, for example, he's I think he's head admin for OzFortress. Yeah. He was running his own league for a while, Respawn League, and then merged it with OzFortress. Like, this is somebody who I know because he's a producer for Kritzkast, but at the same time as doing that, is doing so many other things. And I think that it's super important when you get someone who is very like massively overqualified in the role of production, to allow them to do whatever they want to do, because production is not a big enough stage for them to fulfill all of their dreams. And they will, if you try and hold them back, they'll only pull away harder. So, yeah, like some of these people are just genius.
It's like you said, it comes naturally to them, and I feel like it's almost like masochism or sadism, where they almost enjoy the pressure.
Well, I'm massively jealous of them, but then I think, well, I mean, there's nothing stopping me from learning what they do and fulfilling that role myself, except the reality that, I mean, I've got a job, I've got other commitments in my life, and I don't have the mental capacity, possibly anymore, possibly ever, I don't know, to have such excitement around what they do and how they do it so incredibly well. But I mean, full kudos to them. They're amazing individuals.
It makes you wonder how much of it is like trained versus like just naturally in them being able to present and stuff. But on that note, from what you caught of Seasonal Landed, how did the casters there do, including myself and stuff? How did you feel about that? Just to get your opinion on that.
So, like, the great thing with something like Seasonlander is there is zero expectation on it. Like, I don't necessarily.
That's true.
No. That sounds like the callous, like, sort of.
No, but that's true.
No.
People don't have a high expectation, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Anyone who decides that they are going to give some of their time to something like Seasonlander, whether they're playing or producing, or I think more importantly, something like that, whether they're part of like the admin team, they're just giving up their time in a very unsung way. That's a real opportunity to learn and to be a part of a team and to get some experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, we sort of top of the show, we talked about the catch-22 of like experience versus desired experience. Like just getting in there and making yourself available to someone and being like an available asset. I mean, it's not so long ago we came back from TF Connect in Sweden, and someone who joined that team last minute, this guy called probably Matt. I think their real name is Matt.
I love Matt. Matt's awesome. I love him so much.
So Matt joined the team like within the last month. I mean, this is the sort of events, if you talk about sort of unsung heroes, Chedsy planned this and has been full front of planning this for the last year. We've already started planning next year's events or the end of 2023's events, sort of like 11 months ahead of time. So it's the sort of thing that takes 11 plus months to organise, if not longer. Yeah. But Chedsy rocked up at the last minute. We kind of reached into the quagmire of available human beings and said, we choose you! And rather than them sort of standing around the whole time saying, I don't know what you want me to do, they literally said, what do you want me to do? How can I help? How can I push this forward? And they were just incredible. From an administrative perspective, from achieving all sorts of goals, they made themselves massively available. They kind of gave over themselves to the process of getting the job done. And that for something like TF Connect, which is so many like moving parts, so many cogs,
I can only imagine,
was incredibly useful. Yeah.
It's being able to like put your own ego and put yourself aside to really make sure the project works. Like you said, it's because you can clam up and get nervous, and that's good and all, but you have to keep in mind, like, look, there's people. Yeah,
it's super relevant. So, like, going back to Seasonlander, I think people wanting to do casting for that and wanting to be allowing themselves to be on the microphone for sometimes 4 or more hours at in a stint. That's a weird thing because it's casting, but it's casting with high expectations that you're going to be there for a while. You can't be coming into this hype from moment one. Sure, you're going to be excited to be there, and it's great that you can share that with the audience. But if you peak too soon, you're donezoed. I myself I wasn't ill per se coming in, but I knew I was on the edge of it. And having gone out in a blaze of glory after a couple of hours, I was like, I'm donezoed. Yeah. So anyone else who came in and did like a full-on session, regardless of whatever their style was, they came out of it stronger than they did going in, if not utterly exhausted.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I jumped in, so I had a lot of fun.
Sure. Thank you.
But no worries. Well, like I was surprised that you could keep that up for so long. The first question I had was like, how is Agro doing that voice for so long? And of course, halfway through, no, but it was
my voice. I mean, the whole Agro voice, the whole voice thing. I mean, it sounds like it's painful, but it's sort of not. Like it's that's kind of that is the voice that is in the back of my head, the quiet voice that never gets a chance to talk. That's what that voice sounds like.
I like it. It sounds like a dictator or a really esteemed, distinguished gentleman. It's great. I love it.
It's fine. I pull it up every so often. It's fun. I don't use it at work as often as I should do. That freaks people out whenever I use it at work. Are
you like more mellow at work?
Yeah. At work, I'm very quiet. Very quiet. So I prefer to sit there and type things in and up on the Slack and whatnot.
Agro Kritzkast walks. I'm like, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, everyone kind of gets freaked out. Like, what? Who are you? It's like your alternate persona. It's like if you came out of Superman. It's like, well, this guy, really? But that's the great thing about the internet.
Take the glasses off and rip open my shirt, and suddenly it's me. I'm Superman.
What the hell? It's Agro Kritzkast. What the hell? And I'm glad that like people, you've done a really good job of building yourself up as a reputable or like is it the word reputable? You have like a really great reputation in the community. So every time you were on, people loved it. Like the chat was going insane. Yeah. And for example, when I was tagging in during the North American weekend, and then also during the European weekend, every time you'd pop in or say hello after it wasn't expected that you'd be there, people would be like, oh my God, Agro Kritzkast, there he is. Like, there he is. People definitely know you and they love what you do. And that's what I love, like that experience you have, and you have fun with it. And that's the most important part, is having fun. Because if you don't have fun, like you said, those people were having the laughter come out of their eyes. What is the point? You can't do it right.
For sure.
But it was so great having you come on and having the reactions of people there. It was great. And again, I couldn't think of a better person to at least ask for advice. And I was wondering, should I not ask? And I don't remember who told me to ask you. But I did reach out, and I was surprised that you responded. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you just kind of openly responding to just some guy, So that's really nice of you. Thanks.
I've had this same conversation, well, not necessarily this conversation, but I've had conversations about like how to do pod, particularly TF2 pod, with a bunch of other people. Sometimes it's gone incredibly well, sometimes not so well. I know I've discussed this with you in the past, talking about sort of putting people off by actually letting them in on the secret, this is a lot of work. Like you're letting yourself in for the possibility of doing this for a long time, which is like not even like 10 years. That's a long time, sure, but not even 10 years. Like the possibility is this is the rest of your life.
Oh God.
And exactly. But nobody recognizes the possibility that could be something that is successful. And that they feel like it's difficult to leave because you've received a certain degree of success for it, and why do you want to give this up? Yeah. So, and if you choose to do it for X number of years going forward, then that is something that you would have to make a strategic decision as to decide to pull away from it at some time in the future, or to carry on and keep doing it. So, I think once people recognize that is a possibility, they do the whole second take thing. Oh, what am I doing? What am I really getting myself in for? I thought this was going to be a bit of fun for a couple of weeks. It's not. Really, I mean, it is, but it's also a lot of fun for all the number of weeks that follow it afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I was happy to... Yeah, happy to have a conversation with you, or realistically anyone who legitimately wants to add something to, I want to say the conversation, but add something to the pool of media that exists.
Yeah, to have like a meaningful thing, and not just some guys speaking into an Xbox Live channel, like something that means something, not just chatter,
Yeah.
And that was kind of one of the things I didn't really think about till you brought it up in our conversations, and it's something to think about, and I'm really glad that like that is on the table, because like you said, so some things you learn until it's too late. And to have these things on the table right now, and to really get my foot, moving with these things in mind, will help me potentially make this a better thing, because I do want, all the possibilities in mind, because, like you said, what happens if this is something that lasts 10 years? Does it become work, or does it become fun? Does it stay fun? That's the big issue. And on top of that, it's continuously having at least that level of self, what's the word, quality, because I'm kind of I'm not a worrywart, but I like to I nitpick a lot over little things here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure things go as well as they can. But I know that like when things happen, they just happen. You have to go with the flow and you work with it. We've already had conversations about what to do, what not to do, how to maintain and produce certain things, and on top of that, it's micro to macro detailing, and those are things like you said people don't really consider until they are in front of this project that they may or may not have promised people, and they have to move on it. They have to move on it.
This is something. It was one of those things where you sort of, if you follow the Valve model, which is don't tell anybody your plans until it's almost too late, because that way you can't disappoint anyone if you haven't told them that you're going to do a thing. And also they have no opportunity to spoil the thing that you've done, because they knew about it at the same time everybody else knew about it. So there's that attitude, but it's a real thing for you. You're not like a corporate entity. You are a real human being. This is not something you're necessarily being paid for on day one, even if eventually on day 478 you suddenly like get a advertising thing or whatever. So there's a possibility that there's some sort of compensation, be it financial or recognition, that comes out of this. The reality is, for the longest time, it's going to be a passion project. And even if you look at like the trying to think of TF2 YouTubers who have done well and stuff. Uncle Dane, classic one. So if you look at Uncle Dane, he is someone who has made his entire brand focused around Team Fortress 2. And while he goes out and does other things and plays games with other people now, that was on the tail end of doing TF2 for a decade and a bit.
Yeah, geez.
And that's something that, I mean, his content has never really been, to my knowledge at least, never really been bad.
Yeah.
But it's definitely gotten better.
Well.
Like, his production value is just through the roof right now. Like, whenever he releases a video, this is going to be a banger, and this is going to be something I will want to watch, regardless of what the topic is. The thought process is going to be like well structured.
You can taste that passion.
Yeah.
It's in there.
100%, and it's still there, and it's still there for TF2, and still there for like the people he gets to work with. So so if you think that this is going to be something that's going to stay within the community, that's going to be useful for yourself and for others to listen to, then for sure you're going to want to try and make the best of it when it first releases. But the other side to that is you won't know what mistakes you're about to make until you've made them, and then you won't really know how to fix them until you fix them. And so everything will get better. What's the classic one? Just do it. Yeah. So just do it. Just do it once, and then when you've made a bunch of mistakes, fix those mistakes, and then just do it again, and then just do it again, and just do it again. Keep on just doing it until it feels like a slick process. Even when we got started today, we were like running around trying to figure out microphones and talking about WD-40 so your chair doesn't squeak. There's like all of these little things that you thought you were so I'm assuming that you thought you were so prepared, and then you sat down in your chair and it squeaked.
You're like, oh no!
How frustrating to think that you put all of this effort into preparing for this great endeavor, and then your chair lets you down. Your chair, for crying out loud, lets you down.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so you can't possibly be prepared for everything. You can make a best effort and know that the next time you sit down, you're either sitting on a different chair or you've got some WD-40 with you or whatever it is. But you know the next time is going to be slightly better than this.
Yeah, no, definitely, you're right. And it's funny because being the kind of person that I am where I try to micromanage things and try to make sure everything goes right, at least in my mind, something will go wrong or something will at least
100%.
stick out. It's never perfect, and you have to learn to deal with it and manage it. And one thing I learned, especially from Seasonal Lander, is as things happen, you take note of it. And then you try to make sure, for me at least, almost like sort of a checklist pre and during, so that like the major things at least you can cover. Like, is this right? Is this connected here? Do we have this set up? Is this here, that, there? And it helps. But it's never, from what I have learned, a good idea to be mentally unprepared for something to happen. Because I have seen people, whether it's online or in person, that when that thing goes wrong, the deer in headlights. They kind of freak out. They freeze up. They lose that momentum, and they get all stuck up. And it sucks to see it happen in any situation. But I think people, they never expect the unexpected, which right? But it's the mentality of it going in. So it's trying to be self-aware and not just prepared, but what's the word? Ready to move, ready to maneuver, malleable, just in case.
Agile.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that when I was in Seasonal Lander, because a couple things happened here and there, where we had hiccups, but for the most part, it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed doing it, and you learn things from each other, and, a shout out to Ian for running that whole thing, and again, production and everybody who was involved.
Gotcha.
And you learn a lot, and I apply that stuff not just to online stuff, but obviously real life, which you guys should be doing. Everything you learn should be, at least I would assume, to better yourself, and the experiences I've had, the people I've talked to, have only helped me along in my journey. So I tend to, like you said earlier, I tend to stand up and be the first person to start a project, or the first person to speak or get people together, because I know that it has to happen. Yep. And hey, what do I have to lose? Screw it, So I just go up.
Yeah. Go big or go home.
Go big or go home, my dude. But either way, what was it like for you when you were first starting? Because I'm sure when you started, the first episode was 2008 for Kritzkast?
Yeah, so myself and Tempest, Dr. Zaius, and I want to say one other person, but the name is gone from my head. We'd started doing, we'd formed a clan, or at least Dr. Zaius and Tempest had formed a TF2 clan back in the day when people had clans rather than Discords or whatever it is.
Classic clan things on Skype, right?
So I think we were on a V bulletin board or something of that nature. Part of a clan called Clan Vengeance. Vengeance will be mine.
Badass. Clan Vengeance.
Indeed. So they'd started a clan. I think I joined them in the first week that they'd been operational. They had their own server, again, back in the day when people had their own servers. And in organising this clan, which it was rapidly growing to the point where, like, in the first week, we'd gone up to like 100 people, and it just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So we were sitting down and doing like admin team conversations, weekly meetings to make sure that everyone was being looked after correctly. And it became like a second, like, without even trying to think about it from that, it came like a second job to look after the whole clan and get everything going. But we found ourselves enjoying ourselves during those meetings much more than like anything else that we did throughout the rest of the week or throughout the rest of the weekend. And I think about a couple of us decided, independent of each other, that rather than keeping this conversation to ourselves, we should make it into a podcast.
Yeah. So starting off, it was more of like a social hangout with your friends, right? Like you kind of just had your clan, you'd come online, you'd play. And then it evolved into micromanaging a group of people, I'm assuming, right? Organizing times to play, stuff like that. I mean, it's a mess
of things all happening at the same time. But yeah, it was all a bit of fun. And remember, this is like 2008. The internet was different, a whole lot younger.
TF2 was only a year old.
People on TeamSpeak and I think Mumble, but I think Mumble might have come later. There's no regular streaming service. I think the first time we streamed was like episode 7 or 6, and we were streaming on a service called Live something, TV Live or Stream.com. I can't even remember. It was a long time before we went into Justin TV, and then eventually ended up on Twitch when Justin TV changed its name. Got it. Like it was all a long time ago. And we did one pod, and it was so much fun. But we recorded for like 2 hours. Yeah. It was a lot of fun to record. It was hell to edit. I do feel for Tempest for like taking on that role and responsibility in the early days. Yeah. And I think the first one was so much fun that we assumed that the rest were going to be like that. The second one came, I think, a week later. And then the third one came like 3.5 months later. Like, it was one of those things where you recognize it's like anything. Like, the first time is amazing, but it's like the first time's amazing, but it's ridiculous. The second time it's amazing, and it lasts just the right amount of time, and you feel amazing about it. But then you start thinking about it, and people can't like organize their lives around stuff happening, and you're trying to get everybody into the same space at the same time. Anything like running a TF2 team, for example, you think you've got the right people together in order to do a thing, but then suddenly their lives clash in different ways, and you can't get everyone on the stream, on the server at the same time, and people aren't turning up to do practices, and things are not going the way they expected to. And we ended up having like one of those meetings that says, if we're going to do this, we need to do it at a set time. We need to do it on a regular basis. I think we started doing it every 2 weeks, and then rapidly ramped it up to every week. This is the podcast, by the way. I assume that's what you were talking about.
Yeah. So, to interject just really quickly, what you're talking about here was the Team Vengeance clan. So that podcast you started wasn't more just people from the team hanging out, and was that officially Kritzkast at that point?
Yeah, no, I don't think we'd named it Kritzkast until, I want to say like the 3rd or 4th episode.
Okay.
I think we kind of figured that we needed to call it something so that we could upload it onto iTunes and give it a name. Mm-hmm. And like Clan Vengeance podcast didn't really explain what it was. Like Kritzkast explains what it was, but it was like I think Kritzkast was the name that was chosen. And again, I'm not entirely certain about this. I think Tempest came up with a name based on it being like really good SEO, search engine optimized. Mm-hmm. So because the name didn't exist anywhere else, if you searched for it, this is what you found.
Yeah, you're the only one.
Yeah, the only one. Highlander built into us from the very beginning. So that was something that happened, and it was only really when we'd kind of cemented the formula and cemented like the time that it was going to be recorded, time it was going to go out, and had done sufficient of them that we were confident in what we were doing, that everybody kind of fell into the individual roles surrounding the podcast. And the formula for what that podcast would look like and sound like, and how long it would last, and like the news parts and the bits about constant funny joke episode of the whatever.
What I remember you telling me, if I remember this correctly, you didn't like the name Kritzkast. Is that true?
I hated it. Yeah,
you hated it.
I absolutely hated it. Like, there's one of those things. Like, I'm generally initially a very bad judge of character. I allow like external prejudice to decide for me whether or not someone's going to be a good guy or a bad guy, or a good person or a bad person. I thought you were a knob to begin with. No, it's fine. But I often allow things to kind of, as I've grown older, I allow things to kind of wash over me a little bit, to allow myself to think about things from a different perspective. And I could get behind the idea of having like a search engine optimized name, or a very unique name, and it sort of had the crits part of it, and that kind of made sense, even though it's not necessarily something I fully agreed with. Yeah. And it was sort of a podcast, but it was spelled with a K, and
they just bugged
I kind of came around to it. I came around to it in the end. I'm still not 100% on it. But
really?
like, I'm 99.7. It is now. It is because
you built the brand, and it's out there.
Like it exists now. What am I going to do? Hate it? There's no point. Yeah. And I've lived with it for such a long time now that it seems like it's kind of. I want to give an example of a company that myself and one of the former administrators of head admins of OzFortress, a guy called Tim Bageri, or Warmaster WM. Mm-hmm. Two of us were working on this is an alternative to Twitch, but before Twitch became Twitch. We spent a long time, like months, trying to think of a name for the company and a name for the product. Lots of workshops back and forth trying to figure out what was the best name for it, and I'd fallen on the name, I think, Hitbox.tv, before Hitbox.tv existed, and I was so hell-bent on that being the right theme, because it was hitboxes and it's the .tv, and oh my god, this is so gaming, and people are going to recognize it, and he was having none of it, and he came up with a name, and because he was the money man, that was the name we went with. But also, like, the lesson I got from that was it sort of doesn't matter what the name is. Like, there's going to be so much effort put into that one part of a decision that you think that you can have both an influence on and that is going to make some kind of a massive impact on the rest of the world. Yeah. That you have a tendency towards sticking and not getting any further. You get stuck with this idea that you've got to think of the best name ever. As opposed to just doing a thing, just doing it.
Yeah, the name won't sell it. It's what you've done with the brand. It's like you guys, of course, like Kritzkast. I'm sure if like Kritzkast came out here and now today, people wouldn't think, oh my god, the name Kritzkast is exciting to me. It's exciting because people know what Kritzkast is and what you've been involved in.
I mean, I'd question if it's exciting now. I went onto a trade server yesterday. I don't often go onto trade servers. I went onto a trade server yesterday, and I think somebody wanted me to sign a thing for them, but they were on a trade server. They were on a trade server. I joined the trade server, and I joined in with my degreaser, the Valve community degreaser, and people crowded around me going, "Oh my god, he's got a community degreaser! It's amazing!" And somebody in the back went, "Eh." And that was it. Everybody dissipated at that point. And I'm like, well, actually, it's kind of appropriate. It's like, yeah, it's great that people think of Kritzkast now as being this amazing property, this amazing like thing that's contributed to other people's events and done a few events ourselves. We do the Highlander, done the whole podcast thing, and like we have all this massive, this decade plus history of TF2 related content. But at the end of the day, meh. It's just a thing that happens. If you're into it, fantastic. If you're not, you don't have to be.
So you're kind of touching on is just sort of not letting it envelop you. Just it's a thing you do, and when someone really appreciates it, that's good. But you're not forcing it down anybody's throat. Is what you're saying? Like it is what it is. You're not forced to like it.
Yeah, and living in London, occasionally you'd be out in a restaurant and you'd see someone very famous, like really famous, like internationally famous, wander into the restaurant that you happen to be hanging out in, or the pub you happen to be hanging out in. Yeah. And after a while you think, oh, that's just normal. That's just normal. They are a human being. They have a desire to have a drink, so they went to a pub, and you just happen to be in the same pub as where you are. Like, if you want to wander over there and say, hey, I love the thing that you do, can I buy you a drink? Or, hey, I love the thing you do, and then go and sit down. That's a cool reaction. A shitty reaction is to go over and say, hey, I love the thing you do. Be my best friend.
That's so weird.
That's so... To wind it back from that, like I'm not trying to compare myself to the coolest actor that's ever existed in the world, but
like David Beckham, what?
I know.
This whole time, he's not an actor, first of all. But,
yeah, he's not an actor. The coolest. Yeah, So I think that I'm the sort of person that recognizes that like not everybody is transfixed by the idea of fame, celebrity, or
social status,
accolades, or social status, or that kind of thing. And so if what we have done, or I've personally been involved with, isn't necessarily something that you're excited about, that's okay by me. Like I don't need you to be excited by my presence.
And there's some people who have this weird fascination just because someone is famous or socially known that they have to get involved. And it's sort of a different topic, but when it comes to, say, certain celebrities, people will crowd around to get pictures of them, and it's like they don't even really consume their media or follow what they do. It's so weird because it happens on a micro and macroscopic level, whether it's somebody in the media or in the real world, politician or actor versus somebody in TF2.
The only time I've ever felt myself go, and I use a phrase that Tempest used to use all the time, which was squee. Like that squee. Like the only time I've ever had like that squee moment is in the lift at Bellevue, going up the elevator. Going up to see Valve in their office.
Oh, that must have been okay, but that's exciting, you know.
But it is. But that's the thing. I mean, to David Beckham, I have no interest in football, but seeing like Robin Walker for the first time, like Robin Walker is my David Beckham. You know, he's someone who has
put that on a plaque right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. This time next week, I want to see if I ever see him again. He's going to be wearing a T-shirt with that on him. But yeah, or maybe I should be wearing a T-shirt with that.
Robin Walker is my David Beckham baby.
Yeah. So, but no, there's this sort of thing. Like I appreciate within my world. This is someone whose work I can fully appreciate.
Yeah, and
that's
what
fine.
they've done means something to you. You know, it's not
really
just
does.
Famous.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
I mean, like Ice Frog isn't, but I get that he would be for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. It's not that they work for Valve. It's that they are responsible for this game that I fell in love with a very long time ago, and here I am today, still very, very, very much in love with it now.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think it's something to do with people almost sort of wanting something. I think there's 3 levels. There's, hey, look, there's someone that's famous, but whatever. And then there's someone that's famous or quote unquote famous, and I know what they do and I respect what they do, and I'd like to at least say hello. And then you have, I guess, for lack of a better term, vultures. I don't know, who just want to get in there and get a piece of the action just because it's kind of like this person has high social status and I want to be part of it. When I was really making friends with Beard, he shout out to Beard, I love him, he's my boy. But I got
you
to
say
really
Beard. Is it Beard? Oh,
Beard,
no, I was going to say I thought we were talking about Bird.
Bird?
Carry on.
Oh, Bird. I know Bird too, but not the flex. But I know him. But Beard Expense.
Wait. Are you disrespecting like Bird in preference for Beard?
No.
Are you a Bird man or a Beard man?
I love them both. They're both very screamy. But believe it or not, Bird is more screamy than Beard, if you really believe that or not. But God, that's a horrifying story for another time. But when I really was, trust me, you'll want to hear it. So when I was hanging out with Beard and really get to know him, and we were really becoming friends, it was a real natural sort of like meeting and talking thing, and it wasn't sort of a fanboy thing. And I noticed being around him and other people that people, it's totally fine to enjoy someone's content and be a fan and want to say hello, but there's some people who just are persistent, and you can tell they're like the kid in class who raises their hand first. Or have you seen the line
without actually knowing what the answer is, they'll raise their hands because they want the teacher to point at them.
Yeah, or like it's like the Minecon videos where like the kid runs up to the mic and then he goes, it's that level, right?
Come on.
It's like, dude, you ran up. But I feel really bad for people that have reached a level of like, I'm going to use the word awareness in the public eye just to be like humble instead of saying famous, especially like in something like TF2, to where people will look at you differently, and not treat you like a person. And I feel really bad for people like Beard and Joey and Bird.
For sure.
That happens.
I've never managed to reach that level. Like, for the longest time, there was a whole bunch of, I want to call them script kiddies rather than giving them any kind of like validity. Yeah. But people were ripping them off, going into servers claiming to be various YouTubers or and effectively like changing their profile picture, changing their entire Steam profile and their name to effectively become someone else in the hopes that they can either badmouth them and give them a bad reputation, or else steal something from their public. Like, hey, come and give me your fancy weapons because I'm this fancy YouTuber. And I never had that as a problem. So I've never achieved the level that anybody's ever tried to rip someone off by pretending to be me. And that's somewhat humbling to know that I'm not that guy.
Well, people know you. It's just, I think that people know Kritzkast as a whole, not just the individuals, which you guys all deserve the respect. But Kritzkast as a whole turns heads. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you guys have your own hat in the game. I think that is incredible. I think
one of the funniest lines I get out of people quite a lot, like alarmingly a lot, is Kritzkast, didn't you used to be a thing? I think, come on, that's brutal. That's brutal. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It is what it is. Yeah, we got a hat in game, and that's great, and it's kind of unusual. I think the expectation for that certainly was that it was going to be a one and done. Like we were going to do a hat distribution at a certain time. We made it a convoluted process in order to get that hat. We deliberately obfuscated the process to try to limit the number of people who would be like qualified for getting the hat.
Make it something special, you know.
I was very proud of the quiz we ran. That we called it something big. The actual quiz itself, and we set specific limits so that if you had been to qualify, you need to be part of our Steam group initially. Okay. And that got a lot of people angry with us. But then we said, we said that if different IPs, if they'd been with us sort of for 3 months or more, then they only needed to get 2 questions out of 5 right in order to win. But if they'd been with us for like more than or less than 3 months, then they had to get like 4 questions out of 5 right. So they really had to do their research. And then we saw lots of pages arrive on, especially on RTF2 on Reddit. Oh no! People putting in like the right answers, because they'd assumed that they'd given 5 answers and they'd been given the hat. They assumed that all of the answers were correct. Yeah. So the number of answers in there that were the official list that were wrong was utterly hilarious to me.
Oh, so you had like some sort of system to try to circumvent people cheating?
Yeah, no, 100%. We basically outgained the gamers in terms of getting the lo-fis. But that in itself, I mean, it was probably... It was too much, too weird, and too wrong, and I think we hadn't decided then what we were going to do with regards to like the vintage lo-fi versus the unique lo-fi. And I think we've got a better idea for it now, where vintage is going out to people who have won a competition or done something specifically where the end target result was to get a lo-fi, versus the unique, which goes out almost like a promotional item. Yeah. But I think Valve's expectation of us having that hat then was that we would do a one and done, and then never have to worry about it. Our expectation was we'd always have this hat to give away. The upside being we always have this hat to give away until they run out. I genuinely don't know how many we've got left, by the way.
There's a limit.
There is a limit. We were told that there would be X number, and
oh my god! So what happens? You don't know until you hit it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god! How many years has it been since the hat's been in the game?
Well, so initially we had an expectation that there would be, I think, about as many people that were in the Steam group at the time, but since then, like, people have stopped being interested in joining Steam groups and have left Steam groups and joined Discord groups and all those other things. So when we first did the giveaway, I think we gave away like half of our expected limit. Oh, jeez. And throughout the rest of the next, I don't know, 5-7 years, however long maybe 10 years that we've been doing it, 12 years, God knows. However long we've been doing it, we've been giving out like hats ever since, and we have got to be getting close now. Like I genuinely don't know, but I know it's coming. It's close, and I also know that when it's finally done, there's going to be a certain degree of relief, because that will like not only will it be like done, but I won't have to think about it anymore.
You'll lay that pressure to rest, because people really want to get their hands on them too, right? Like it's a thing where people
like there's definitely collectors out there that feel like either they're entitled to it or that they just want it. We used to do. In fact, no, we still do. It's been a while since I put out like a YouTube video, which is normally a thing that we were doing certainly for a period like 2 or 3 times a week. We have enough content stored up that we can do that for again, and it's something that I fully intend to get back to at some stage. When I've got my life back in track and all those other things, ducks in a row, etc.
Yeah, get your life in order before you really dedicate something online. You know, it kind of matters more. But yeah, for sure.
For sure. So we had a competition going where if you designed an image that we later used as a thumbnail, then you'd get a vintage lo-fi for your efforts. You only get one, so you might have like 3 or 4 thumbnails in there, but you only get one vintage lo-fi. But it's a way of us thanking them for being involved in the process, and it helps. Everyone benefits out of it. But we ended up getting like an individual who had a couple of images made, they then sold their services to other people. They would put forward, they would give these SF images to these people, and they would then post them under their own accounts, under their own names, as a way of generating income for themselves, effectively selling the opportunity to maybe get a lo-fi for this third party.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a part of me that really wants to admire that grift.
Yeah.
Jenny, it's one of those things you think, wow, the amount of like the ballsiness behind that was
to try to scam it all out of
somewhat
people.
genius. Yeah, no, I definitely admire it, but at the same time, you have to ban them, obviously. And
it's like I don't know if you watch the World Cup, but it's like that striker from the African team who immediately pulled his shirt off and flung it around and got ejected with a red card. The referee was smiling and laughing like, "That was great, buddy. Like I have to kick you out.
You're gone.
To kick you out, but it's funny.
You're not gonna play footy anymore, but well done, mate.
It's funny.
Well done.
Yeah. It's entertaining, I think. It's interesting to see that stuff happen. But when it comes to that art, I mean, was it all the same style? Was it kind of like easy to spot? Or like was it more like looking at the account?
Me looking at it, there's no way I could tell. But we have so many people who have either contributed their own artworks in the past that have come and later joined the admin team. And they like it's the same sort of thing. If you look at a rock for 1,000 hours, then you can look at any rock and know instantly that the flaws in it. The SFM artists that were working with us at the time, who are part of the admin group, would just take one look at an image and go, "Yeah, that's definitely one of theirs." Like it's just really, really obvious to them. To me, not even slightly, but to them, they could tell, and they were proven correct. They're proven right.
People, man, will go out of their way to get their hands on stuff, and it's one of those things where, like, when you have any sort of competition or reward system online, there is going to be a flaw or a loophole, and people are going to abuse it. It sucks.
We've definitely run competitions in the past, and people have. So we had one rule on the Discord for the longest time, and it took someone like Sawadani to point out that actually that's not sufficient. It's funny, haha, and everything, but it's not sufficient. Our one rule was don't be a dick. And within that rule, there was significant amount of leeway either side of it to allow our admin team to say, actually, that's just a meme, that's funny. Or that's crossing the line. But within that, people didn't know what constituted being a dick, so they would push the line as far as it would go, and then push it a bit further. And only in doing so would they find out what a dick was and be banned or whatnot. So
I get you.
We found ourselves having to specify exactly what constituted a dick move. I'm sorry, I hope you're not monetized at this point, in which I said,
no, who cares?
Like, the D word a billion times. So we ended up having to, and certainly for becoming partner within Discord, we ended up having to quantify exactly what our rules were and how you break them in order to be kicked out. Like what is unacceptable. But
I know that
whenever there's a possibility, people will try and push the boundaries, will try and just nudge that a little bit further on.
Well, whenever you have, and I know it's really popular for people to like rib and make fun of, like, certain people, for the lack of the meme term, Discord admins or Discord moderators, because that carries a whole baggage with it. But people that at least run events and or communities, I know that people give them crap for having all these rules in terms of service and all that. But the reality is they're only there because other people eventually make them necessary. Like you said, somebody will push a boundary somewhere where you have to draw a line, and you draw a line somewhere else every time someone gets close to a line where they shouldn't go past it. And that's why I think certain places end up with so many rules and terms, and people get mad about it. But you have to keep in mind they're only in place because someone will get in the way and try to cause problems. One of the
slightly cooler things we did a while back with that competition that we ran. We'd started off with fairly nebulous rules, the things that I thought were going to be relevant. We'd done a few play tests. We'd sort of figured out what the kind of the sneaky tactics people were going to use to try and break the rules without breaking the rules were. So we'd knocked up a series. I think it was like 8 rules. that we figured were enough to keep people on the straight and narrow. But then we said, like, if you break a rule, if you do something that's so egregious that it sort of befouls the whole notion of this competition itself, we'll kick you. You'll be banned from that month. You won't be allowed to play again that month until the rules are reset at the end of the month.
Yeah, I get you. Like, it's a level where like we both know it's disingenuous what you're doing.
But you'll have a new rule set up that specifically blocks the thing that you were doing, and it will be named after you.
The Michael rule.
Yeah.
Please do not urinate into the faucet. That is not a good idea. I didn't know I had to explicitly state that, guys, but now I have to state that.
But now it's stated. So you kind of like shape it up a bit. So I don't know, urinate in the faucet. You know, no appendage you be placed inside of a plumbing apparatus or whatever it is that you need to say to extend it and make it as nebulous as possible, and to ensure that nobody sticks a finger in there or a big toe in there and whatever.
Yeah,
but that's the sort of thing. So, but in doing so, in naming it after them, while they've been both named and shamed, they then become. They kind of automatically become like the person that wants to immediately like point out if someone else is doing it. It's not just they kind of become a cop of that particular rule.
What?
They become their own because they don't want other people trying to nick their fame.
Stealing thunder, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something you've noticed?
Yeah, no, it's one of those like amazing things that you didn't actually think about until you did it yourself for the first time. That it really worked, and they also start trying to like push the boundaries of what's possible, find out all of the things that will break the rule, either to have something done that will make sure that it's a much more hardened event for next time that it runs. So it's like a self-oiling machine at that point.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You get one sheep to herd the rest.
By the end of I think we ran this competition for like a year, maybe two. By the end of it, the rules were absolutely on point, and there was nothing left to break. And it was still fun. It was still fun. That was the weirdest part of it. And still, like yonks later, it's been a couple of years since we ran it. People still go up to us and say, "Well, why are you running that competition again?" Or so like there's such possibilities out there for rather than like holding down the stick at the bridge and saying you shall not pass. You know, you can pass, but you've got to like if you can find a way of jumping over me, then tell me how it is, and I'll Well, no, tell me how you got across, and we'll make sure that that's not a thing that anyone else can get across in that particular way next time.
And that's a really good tactic. I mean, the government uses that. Many governments try to do that when it comes to just rule breaking and stuff. But again, it just goes to show like to what extent one person has to set up the rules to make sure everyone is having fun, or at least has a fair shot.
But if you look at someone like Twitch, for example, they will they'll often put a rule into effect and not specify what it is, exactly so that they can then go back, and the leeway that they give is entirely up to them. They don't have to enforce the same rule for different streamers. So a smaller streamer might get kicked and banned forever, whereas a bigger streamer will get kicked for a week. Like for what is perceived of as being the same rule, but they're not breaking anything. They're not breaking their own terms of service. Because they've kind of left the door just wide enough ajar that they can have a bit of leeway, and without anybody really having a leg to stand on in terms of criticizing them.
Well, you specifically with Kritzkast, I mean, the time you've spent with them is a pretty good amount of time now. When you first started, obviously we touched on the whole social skills of learning to really sit and talk and communicate with somebody.
Yep.
But when did you really learn to run things when it comes to communities or rules? Because it sounds like it's a whole other ballpark where you have to actually learn to hold down competitions and set rules and sort of micromanage and maintain these communities. Because I'm sure it started with your clan vengeance, but now that it's like a bigger scale where it's like broadly over the TF2 community, especially with that competition you did. Did you have any experience at all, or was it just learning as you went?
Okay, so nobody knows what they're doing until they've done it. I particularly like one of the great things about me is that I'm me. and it's very difficult to.
I agree.
Yeah, well, there you go. But from my perspective, I'm me. So if I want to do something and stay with something, then I can definitely do that and stay with it. So from my perspective, I will continue going on and doing a thing. And if that means that other people don't want to do that thing with me, then it doesn't necessarily mean that that they have decided not to be part of it anymore. But they've decided that their life is going to go in a different direction, and I want to keep this thing going. So I've kept this thing going for the longest time. And the only way that would ever really make any sense is if I hand as much power as possible out to other people. So from Discord, from a Discord perspective, we have a very proficient Discord group of admins that look after the Discord servers, and I go in there sufficiently like frequently in order for me to still like be part of the Discord without feeling like I'm just like a visitor. Same thing with we don't pod anymore, but the competitive side, the Twitch side, that's very much owned by Vtuft and the other producers on that team. And again, I'll show my head every so often and wave a flag, but it's their game. It's their thing that they're doing. Yeah. I think the only thing that is mostly me is the Twitter, and I had various reports from people saying that they have no idea what's going on the Twitter, and I'm fine with that
funny.
As well.
I like the Twitter. It's funny. You got a lot of funny replies out there. I really enjoy seeing what Kritzkast tweets or they respond to people, because it's pretty relevant. It's pretty funny, and it's really fun to like interact with the community and
I super
know, like, hey, we're interacting with y'all. We're having fun.
I super love like tweeting random stuff and seeing what like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I like the opportunity to talk to individuals on like Twitter's a really weird platform. It's definitely a lot weirder in the last couple of years. But it's one of those platforms that holds a tremendous opportunity to be like a massive clique that is like with the doors wide open that anyone can join and leave messages in. But if anyone at any stage can like tweet something about TF2, then, or even like Steam or games related, I can just drop a message in there, and we've now got a large enough following that like it evokes a response, and the messages that I leave get higher up in the listings and other
recommended stuff.
Right? So you end up having really, really funny and bizarre conversations with people that are generally far, far outside of your reach.
That's cool. It's like a public square like Elon Musk was talking about. And it's funny because like you can see that with something like Musk where he'll just be replying to random stuff, and you get to see interactions. I think I really noticed that when brands started like trying to be hip and funny, and some of them were kind of funny, online, and people will tweet out something to a company or one company to another, and you'll see them interact, and it's just kind of like one of those things where in the like real world,
no other place, no other place in reality would that interaction ever happen, and if it happens, then no one else would be privy to it. That's just so it is sublimely surreal and such fun to be a part of. I kind of love it. It doesn't necessarily always work. Being like so often, Kritzkast is much bigger than me, and I'm very happy to say that. And I'm very happy that it has a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. And whenever people like, if I as Kritzkast Twitch channel visit someone else's Twitch channel, then their reaction is real Kritzkast. And I kind of feel feel imposter, because yes and no. Like I am a member of Kritzkast, and I hold a fairly senior role within Kritzkast. But Kritzkast notoriety, certainly in most recent years, is not a result of the effort that I've put in, but the result of the effort other people have put in. So yes, real Kritzkast, but kind of not at the same time.
There's a humbleness to it where you're like, I'm part of a team, and there's some people who would run with that sort of glory and fame and try to act high and mighty, but I'm glad that you see it in a very humble way, which is what we need more of. So like good on you for not like strutting around like, I'm Kritzkast, look at me, which it's fun.
I'm Kritzkast.
It's fun to play the character, right? Like it's Kritzkast, sure. And we're just stopping by to say hi, but it's not like a pride and like what's the word, like a pride and sort of envy kind of thing where you're just having fun and ribbing with people. So I've noticed you pop by, and it's always funny to see you.
Yeah, and I like to drop like a Kritzkast Lo-Fi on people who are streaming as well, particularly if they've haven't streamed TF2 in the past, or they've like returning to TF2 after a long absence. Like anything that, or they're doing something unique and special and weird and wonderful with their stream. Maybe that they're gonna pull more people into watching TF2 and spreading like the good word of Team Fortress 2 as being like this very real game that is still existing and is still a tremendous amount of fun. So that's something cool that I get to do. And
you're like Santa Claus. You get to stop in and
all
you're
year
like, look
Santa.
At this gift. And you create like a core memory for people where it's like they will always remember that moment where like the Kritzkast the channel came by, watched me, and then gave me a hat. Where it's like people put teams of people and groups and brands above themselves so highly, where it's like you're just normal people that run a thing, you know. But they put brands and people, whether it's like content creators like you said, or it's a group, and they almost feel like inferior subconsciously and feel the need to go interact with them because hey, they're bigger than me, therefore I should, I want their attention.
So TF2 is weird. TF2 is weird on like so many levels. I feel like I talked for like hours about this, but one of the I'll temper this conversation. One of the things that makes TF2 weird is that the TF2 esports in particular, there are almost no other esport game that is 100% community like led and run. Not sad. Just led, but actually like run, fully run without completely independent of any like big leagues or the developers. Like it is. And this has been pointed out to me by. This is not my thought, by the way. This has been pointed out to me by someone who is a much like higher or bigger cheese in the world of esports.
Gotcha.
But we are super unique. So it is entirely the community that generates the interest that controls like the narrative of the games that are being played, chooses the maps, decides on the backdrop, and provides the cameras and the casters and the producers, provides the admin team and gets people to turn up at an event at the same location, and like that is not something that exists anywhere else. And the closest you can come to that is something like Smash, or to a certain degree Evo back in the day. But we're still this very nerdy group of people that kind of do this thing, and with that in mind, like it is so important to recognize that even if you want to perceive Kritzkast as being like an esports org, we kind of are, and we definitely aren't. Like we kind of are because like there's this plethora of people involved in anything we do, and certainly you can point at an individual and know exactly what they're involved in and what their role is within the group. But at the same time, like nobody's making bank off this. Nobody's like nobody's getting rich off this. Nobody is holding up any like position of authority within like anything that is not like the position of authority that they may hold is as a result of people agreeing that they hold that position of authority, as opposed to passion, like, it's all passion.
It's all passion. And there's no interest. It's just people love the game and they want to see it keep going and they have fun playing it.
Yeah. So when you start talking about like Kritzkast as an entity doing a thing, it's like it's because a bunch of people have said, "Hey, let's do a thing." So
that's it. That's it. Let's do a thing.
Yeah, let's do a thing. And if nobody has any descending or nobody can stop it with enough vigor, then that thing ends up happening regardless. And how big a thing that thing is dependent on how much effort people are willing to put into making it a thing. So I can't remember what the beginning of this conversation was or what he was even thinking about. But it's done.
The point is like I guess the community is so independent by means of they were forced into a corner, and for a lot of games the scene comes and goes for a game, and that's for most games. But for TF2, it's especially unique because, of course, it's had its heyday, but it's still kicking. It's still doing pretty great, and it wouldn't, it wouldn't have done so without the community, and not just in terms of playing the game and developing strategies, but creating maps, creating weapon concepts, creating events, putting together content and keeping this kind of community alive around it. And I don't see games like Call of Duty ever being able to come near the level of adoration and love people have for a game like this. And it's a shame that, if we had even a couple of smidgets of like help from a developer, let's say if Valve themselves are like, hey, we'll want to micro or semi-sponsor something, an event, like, hey, we see TF Connect is big, we're going to give you a budget, and we trust you enough to run this. Like, do you know how much they could get done, how much fun stuff they could do with the passion they have with that sort of funding or support behind it? It'd be unbelievable. But even what they've done now, again, Kritzkast, TF Connect, all the other groups out there that have built things together, and all the leagues and competitive players who put blood, sweat, and tears into making this game and the community what it is. If they had that support, who knows what they could accomplish? It's such a great thing. And I think it's a double-edged sword where if people were quote-unquote babied, I guess, by the developers and nothing was in the community's hands, you wouldn't see the level of passion and complex projects you've seen.
Yeah, I think you're right in that, certainly. A double-edged sword is a good phrase to use in this situation. If the developers got involved and decided that they wanted to either host their own event or else sponsor an existing event, you would quickly find that groups like Kritzkast, Essentials, RGL, Camping TF, TV,
Black Bash,
all of these things would not be able, would kind of be cast to one side. And you would end up with the Face It tournaments, or you would end up with the ESL tournaments, and all of the effort that the like what are now considered to be like the big three or the big five, or whatever it is, the big boys of casting.
Gotcha.
They wouldn't get the look-see to be part of that event, which is hard. It's hard to think that, like, if we finally got the thing that we were asking for, we wouldn't actually have a role to play within that. But at the same time, it would still be kind of awesome. Like, nobody's going to say, Valve, don't sponsor this because, for God's sake, I want it to be our thing. Yeah. No, the floating boat rises. Something to do with tide. Incoming tide floats all boats, whatever it is. So if there was more money involved in TF2, if there was more interest in it, and it went out to a wider audience, then whenever somebody, be it Kritzkast Essentials or Team Fortress TV or any one of these guys, produced content, then there would be more eyeballs on it. There'd be more opportunity to shill our work to sponsors and to be able to enhance the lives of casters and producers alike. So I don't think anyone's going to say no to that whole thing. But yeah, there is a reality associated with this, that we're in this bizarro world bubble where it's ours for as long as we can hold on to it. But as soon as the rest of the world finds out about it, we will almost certainly, to a larger degree, lose it.
You almost sell. It's not like selling, but you almost lose a part of that kind of like special community, I guess, for lack of a better term, sparkle, where it's like, hey, we built this ourselves and this is ours, and in turn, there are less rules.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the individuals involved would be able to find a place for themselves. If you look at something like Overwatch, for example, where the individuals that were doing very well within Team Fortress 2 that had a place, like Josh and Bren, these guys had their they were very, very much at the top of their game when Overwatch came out, and they were able to transition into that game and be the faces of that game. So the casters themselves would find roles for themselves within like professional Team Fortress 2 casting, if it was a real gig now. So the people involved, the people that you're used to seeing, would definitely have an opportunity to go and work in those larger orgs. But the small orgs, the the fantastic little family that we have at the moment would be certainly mollified.
Yeah, it wouldn't feel the same, right? You wouldn't have that camaraderie of like being in the trenches together and working through the difficulty that was this community.
For sure.
You know, it's interesting to see. Like we said, it's kind of that tempered steel kind of thing where it's like you strike it hard enough with enough heat, it's gonna eventually, hopefully, either break or form something really tough. And the TF2 community, I mean, there's people who have come and gone, you know, and they get burnt out. And I understand that, but I feel like people will always end up gravitating towards this, not just because of the gameplay, but the memes and the people that surround it, you know. And I've had moments where I've taken breaks for months, but I eventually get that itch to come back. And like you said, individuals really make the experience, you know. If it was like a different style, different sort of like more serious tone, it wouldn't be as interesting gameplay wise. But on top of that, if we didn't have certain characters and people online that took the interest in the game and really ran with it, that make such unique content like Purple or Dane or whoever you want to pick, you know, it's just you would feel a little less connected, you know, because it's the general thing that you're subconsciously understanding when you consume that sort of media is that we all love this game. You know, that's the subconscious thing. We're here because the game is fun and we love it. And, you know, like Kritzkast is here because presumably you love the game and you love to play it. You know what I mean? You love the people around it when it comes to anything, you know?
I used to be angry when people would leave TF2 and they would go off and do their own game. How dare you? This is the game that we
this
like.
Is the game.
You were made famous by this game, and now you're going off and doing something that's not Team Fortress 2. How dare you? You're leaving the community. But I mean, like, I'm obviously more chilled about it now. But I think that part of that is the recognition that TF2 is the game that you'll always come back to. TF2 is kind of like the memory of your first girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. The first person or the first game you ever fell in love with, or the first game that gave you that sense of family and camaraderie. The fact that it still exists X number of years or months or days or weeks or whatever it was since you last played with it means that it'll always be a thing that you can come back to and spend time with, and you'll immediately, like, not even within like the space of a game, but possibly less, as soon as you like you lay your hands over the WASD keys and you rest your hand on the mouse, and the memories of playing like endless hours of Scouts on various jump maps and
it's like Anton Ego eating
whatever.
Ratatouille.
Suddenly you breathe the fresh air that is Team Fortress 2, and you realize that you're home again. So like it is one of those games that that will forever be pulling on your heartstring, that will ever be dragging you back to it. And even if you don't, like, in your remembrance of it isn't quite what you thought it would be, and you go away and stray away from it again, you will come back to it again. It is the ultimate game to come back to.
It's like having an old dog where you look back fondly on the memory of like when they were young, you know. Now they're all old, but they're still there, still faithful. And you're right about the heartstring thing, because I feel like in I know it's really corny to say stuff like this, but I feel like we live in a different generation completely, like the online generation, where it's like, you know, a lot of what we do socially, you know, tends to lean to the online side. And there's people that I have met, there's things that I have done and things that I've learned that I can genuinely say have made me who I am today. And whether that's better or worse, you decide. But I feel like it's maybe better because, you know, I've flown out to different states to meet people that I've met online, especially through this game, you know, and it's such a pleasure and a blessing to be able to feel like, you know, you can meet people who share interests not only in taste of games and stuff, but when it comes to just general stuff online, because it's sort of like an icebreaker, you know, a bridge, a game like this where you meet people and you're kind of, you start to feel each other out. And of course, you know, you can go out and grab a drink at a pub and just kick back and talk to somebody, right? That's cool and great and all. But I feel like a lot of people, like we've talked way before, like have this sort of social anxiety, or they just don't feel as comfortable, and they have an opportunity to really meet people and build genuine friendships, although maybe older generations might not understand it or look at it as just like a screen. And warranted, it's not great to just stare at a screen, but at the same time, you're meeting people.
Yeah,
you know, you're talking to people, and be careful, of course. But I'm so happy I've met certain people in my life that I know will be around in my life for a long time.
There's a certain degree of bias in that. I mean, I'm assuming you are, but I know that I'm a fairly, how do I put this politely? I'm a large white cis bloke that I know that I'm capable of looking after myself in almost all circumstances. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going around carrying knives or anything of that nature. There's no need. But I know
I get what you're saying.
But I know that if I meet someone who I've previously had a conversation with or some sort of interaction with online, and I meet them in real life, that I know that I'm going to walk away from it happy, if not necessarily happy, but certainly I'll walk out with as many limbs as I walked in with.
All my fingers.
Yeah, all my fingers. So that for me is an experience that I know that I can say that almost without exception, everybody that I've met as a result of like having some interaction with them in Team Fortress 2 has been a positive life, like IRL in real life interaction with them afterwards. So TF2 is kind of cool that way, like much higher hit rate than anything else that I've been involved with online. I think I was one of the few people that was actually kind of happy to have a lot of the conversation online first and then meet in real life a long time before like TF2 was even a thing. But TF2 is almost a way of guaranteeing that those people that you do meet, you'll at least have something to talk about, if nothing else.
It's like a social club. It's like your clan, you know?
It is. And generally, like, LAN is a great opportunity to do things like that. I love doing LANs. Not really for gaming. It's surreal. Like, the more LANs you go to, the less gaming you do.
You just want to go run to meet that person you've been talking to for a couple minutes. It's like, oh, it's you, dude. I'm going to slap you in the face. You're real.
Yeah. Not necessarily, but it's definitely like that kind of thing. Like the possibility of like real interaction is there that is kind of missing from that online experience. But you have all of the online experience to build off of in order to sit down and talk and to have a big manly hug with and.
It's a camaraderie you can almost build there, you know, where it's like, I trust you with certain things, or like you just feel like a more genuine friendship versus a stranger you meet on the train where it's like, hey, have a nice day, and then you see him every other couple days when you ride the train, you know. It's like you happen to meet and then speak, and you're associated and you know each other. But for something like this, it's like we share an interest. It's like we have something in common that's deeper than just, we ride the same train.
You already know the nickname that only they know, that like not even the shortened version of the name. You know that the nickname that they've called themselves when they were 14 and they're stuck with now.
Yeah.
Like it's
so embarrassing.
Yeah, for sure.
When I was hanging out with Beard, he would either say rubber or mango when we were hanging out.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird thing because when it's his voice saying that name, I don't care, you know. But like if we're out like at a grocery store or grabbing something to eat, and he says my name, or like, because it's firsthand, it's secondhand nature, you know. You just say it because that's what the person you've known. Mm-hmm. It's a little awkward to like really get to know someone's name and use that publicly. It's so weird. Like, I'm sure at LANs, no one has a real name at LANs. You know what I mean?
I have a very, very good friends that I've known for the longest time. Went to their wedding fairly recently. I think I introduced them to their only wife, and I originally knew them as their game name, and it's taken me about 3 years to replace their in-game name with their real name now.
Like, unlearn it.
Yeah, to unlearn that kind of instinctive reaction. And even now I find myself like deferring back to online name because it is who people are. Well, that is not even a real sentence, but it's the persona that they've chosen for themselves, and the one in which they forever are trying to reach towards, as opposed to
it's their identity,
at least the persona that they chose themselves when they were 14 and naming themselves in an internet cafe. But whatever. That's by the by. That's what they're stuck with now.
It's great, like you said, to really get to know somebody, because online we are pixels and all that stuff, but there's hopefully real people who have genuine stories, and people are going through things, and I can tell you again, when it comes to TF2 itself, there's been days where it's like it's a really rough day, and I kind of want to sit and just watch one of these YouTube videos, from a content creator. I want to just play Payload. Maybe my buddy's on, I'll pocket him and we'll just have a good night, and it's something you can fall back on. I'm not saying that like it should be replaceable, or it's something to replace healthy habits in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But there are moments where you just need something to kind of
definitely
ease the tension and scratch that social itch. And I'm very thankful that we do have a game that lets us do that, even though we have no mouth and we must scream in our own little echo chamber, we have each other at the very least. And I'm very happy to have met 99.7% of all people I've met online for the most part. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Exactly what you mean. Yeah.
But it's so much fun. But in terms of online presence for things like Kritzkast, what do you see for the foreseeable future? And not just Kritzkast itself, but you and sort of content that's coming. Yeah. Just in general, if you've put any thought to it.
So obviously, for the competitive side, we've got a couple of seasons that are coming up at the moment. I think we had our first real success with TF Connect when we managed to get front page of Twitch, and that exposed us to a whole new audience. And that was a real kind of that was a moment where we realized that actually there's a lot more people out there than just the TF2 regulars that might be interested in Team Fortress 2. So we've got a few more things of that nature that kind of exposing us to different audiences. We've got the, I think, not Season-Lander, we've got the Highlander Nationals happening this year as well. So we'd be very hopeful that we have an opportunity to produce that content. And I know that a lot of the Highlander on Oz Fortress is being streamed on our channel as well. So I'm really psyched that we're getting a lot of esports Highlander content and more streamed with us. TF Connect, obviously, big one coming up at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Yep, so planning for that, as I said, already begun. So
Black Bash is in the works right now, right? They've had a couple of meetings here, I think, recently.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we get Black Bash on Kritzkast. I'm always up for doing random stuff, though. If anybody has got some sort of event they want to have, either me or Agro Voice or whichever mix of version, then hit me up. Love to get involved in that kind of stuff. I think
absolutely. So Kritzkast is relevant, dude. Of course, people look fondly back on it, but of course, it's still a thing. We're still moving,
God, yeah, no. Occasionally get messaged by people saying, "How do I get to be a part of Kritzkast?" And I'm taken aback by the very notion that people want to be a part of Kritzkast, but of course, it's a real thing, People want to be part of this, and that they're new to TF2, or they're relatively new, they're less than 10 years have been playing TF2, less than 2,000 hours of TF2 under their belt, and they want to be part of this thing. Newbies, kids. But yeah, it's kind of it's awesome to still have that sort of relevance. As I said, we want to get a whole bunch of YouTube videos up as well. That's something that needs to be done. The
opportunity to really reach out, right, and kind of be an influence in people's.
For sure.
Not controlling, but for example, like you just said, maybe there's a whole new generation of TF2 players that are joining in.
Yeah.
Last year, or the last couple of months, whatever it may be, because they're always coming in.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's cool to kind of reach your hand out, and grab them by the hand like you don't know the mistake you just made, buddy, and just pull them into this whole world of just TF2 crap, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But it must be really nice, having the ability to have that influence on people, I think that's the coolest part. Is not just what you've done and what you've built, but what you can do with that afterwards. I think that's equally as important, which people don't tend to really think about, not just resting on your laurels, but really getting out there and having fun, and I guess sort of giving back in whatever way you can. Yeah.
There's always opportunities out there that when they come along, just say yes, and then figure out what terrible mistake you've made afterwards.
Yeah, helping me out a little bit. You've really helped me out a lot.
Yeah, nice.
But again,
nice
I do
quick little chat we're having on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, a little Tuesday afternoon here. For me, it's middle of the day. For you, it's probably getting later, right?
It is getting later, yeah. But it's all
Well,
good fun.
It's all good fun. And again, I just thought it'd be really fun to kind of have a christening, as the first episode. Have somebody who knows the ropes, and really can give pointers. And of course, they don't know that we've been chatting for a while now, and you've been a tremendous help, not just in terms of like, strictly mentoring / teaching, but we've just sit and talk, and we've had great conversations that I feel like would have been great to record. Aside the point, we've had great ones. Really,
that we didn't record those. They're much better than this conversation. Yeah.
I had fun. No, man. Well, it's like you said, this is a learning process for me more than anything. What's up, and I'm really thankful that you've come by. And I mean, of course, as time goes on and people get to know each other better, things feel way more relaxed. They feel way more fun. It's like the way you put it. It's like sitting at a pub and grabbing a drink, and that's the energy that I love the most, because I don't want people to clam up and get uncomfortable. It's just talking, and hopefully people can unwind and have fun with it. So, I appreciate all the help you've given me. I really do.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on here. As your hopefully first guest, assuming this actually gets released at some stage. And genuinely looking forward to seeing what you do with this, and who you get on next, and where you go with it. And obviously we've had this conversation in the past, but looking forward to your 7th episode.
Once I dig down to the trench 6 episodes and I realize, what have I done? If I continue to push forward and make it happen, then maybe you'll see the light on the other side of the tunnel, right?
For sure.
It's been a very, very huge pleasure, Agro. I really appreciate you being the first guy to hop on here. Again, I for some reason, for my peace of mind, I'm like, Agro's been helping me. Agro's been, talking to me. We've been chatting and this and that. I feel like I would have a peace of mind jumping off of a board that I felt was stable enough to really, feel comfortable with and set the tone for the future, and I really appreciate the genuine, smart conversation. And I really appreciate you having to say what you had to say and sharing your wisdom with anybody who is listening, and myself. So thank you again.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and good luck.
Thank you for listening to the first episode of the TF.Talk Podcast, or should I say the pilot episode. Won't technically count as the first episode. Thank you to Agro Kritzkast for all the help he's given me. In retrospect, this was a great conversation, but we'll be expanding outside of just TF2 to have general conversations with people. So shout out to Agro and for all the help and mentoring he's been doing. So keep an eye out for him returning in the near future. Otherwise, I'll be expecting to put out the first season before the end of the year. It's looking like maybe an episode every 2 weeks. Once I get all this recorded, I've got a bunch of very exciting people coming in the future. I won't spoil it just yet, but you'll want to stick around. It's going to be great. Otherwise, information about the podcast, no Discord link, no special links or Patreon or anything just yet. If you'd like to see those, let me know. The only place to really reach out to the podcast would be the Twitter, that's linked below, and you can directly message me on Discord if you have my info, or let somebody know that knows me, just through mutuals maybe. It's going to be a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys waiting so long, because I've been dealing with a lot of stuff, whether it be the IRS, other financial burdens, school, personal, health issues. It looks like a lot of that will be manageable for the most part from here on out, so we've got things rolling. As of recording this, I've already got like 3 episodes recorded, and we're going to get the ball rolling on that. So shout out to everyone who's involved, who's going to be here in the future. Again, Agro, and you guys for listening. So I hope you guys at least enjoyed this. I promise you the future will be a lot more fun. This is just, again, the pilot, just a sense of what we're getting here, getting our sea legs. So I'll catch you guys in the first official episode of TF Talk.